this in your pocket.
You got it. Do you have it turned? You have it turned on. I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It does. It shot you. You don't know this. Every time I get off base on the Bible, somebody hits a button and it shocks me back into place.
I bid you a good morning in the name of Jesus.
Good morning.
Boy, was you wound up.
Okay.
I don't know what he had for breakfast, but whatever it was, I want to get the recipe. Don, I loved it. You were exciting. You were challenging. You were up and at it today. Woo! I've only been preaching about 71 years, but I'm nervous as I can be this morning. So if I prance around up here a while, I'll get over my nervousness and talk to you a little bit this morning. I brought some things with me that I wanted to talk to you about today. Crown of Thorns. Now, I've been driving my tractor around the field, and this thorn tree drooped over, and it was always catching me. And I got the nippers out and nipped off some of those and sort of put them together. I call it the crown of thorn trees, but it probably isn't the same as they had. And I thought I'd introduce you to a few other things here today. What about those spikes? I don't know what size the spikes was, but there was some spikes that they drove in the cross. And yeah, wow. They had a cat of nine tails, and I thought I'd say a few words about that. Maybe something like that. They and then they had to put some seal around where the stone was, and then they had to put a seal on it, you know, and that's a crown, isn't it? Yep. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that. I want to tell you a little bit about me first of all. Since you don't know me, Mom put a pair of bib overalls on me when I was a little boy and sent me off to school with a poke lunch, and had to cross through 6 barbed wire fences and then up a mud road for 3.5 miles to a little one-room school. So that's me. Now you know who I am. First day in high school, first day, they called an assembly, and there was a couple guys in there that had black suits on, and they were giving out these New Testaments. Wasn't quite like this. It was a little red one, and I never had one. That was the first time that I'd been going to church since I was a little boy, but nobody talked about this book. And they were giving them out for free. Boy, I'll tell you, it's exciting when a country boy gets a hold of something free. You all like free stuff? I'm for free. I've been preaching for 40 years for free. Haven't never got a penny for it. You like that? Yeah. Well, I got addicted to that book that they gave me. You know, and when you get addicted to something, it's hard to get over it. I haven't been able to get over it. So I want to talk to you this morning a little bit about this book that I got addicted to. And there was somebody in it that was the main character, Jesus. So I'm going to start tonight at the upper room. We're going to sing a song, and then they walked out of the upper room. They're heading over to Gethsemane. It's a pretty good walk, probably 600 meters. That's a, quarter to third of a mile. And on the way to Gethsemane, only one writer tells us a story. Only John tells us a story. Matthew, Mark, and Luke say nothing about this, but he bowed in prayer. It only covers 31 verses. Maybe it's 29. One whole chapter of John's Gospel is about a prayer before they get to Gethsemane. And listening to a few of the opening lines, here's the opening of it. He lifted up his eyes to heaven and said, Father, glorify thou me with the glory that I had with thee before the world was. Oh, my. What an opening to a prayer. I've never heard anyone open a prayer like that. The glory that I had with thee before the world was. That was before there were cats and dogs. That's before there was snails and snakes. That's before there was human beings. That was before there was an atmosphere. And he says, glorify me. And this is eternal life, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. In this prayer, he said, I have manifest thy name unto the men which thou gavest me out of the world. Thine they were, and thou gavest them me, and I have kept them, and they have kept thy word. He recommends them to the Father. He says, they have believed that thou didst send me. And then he prays that they'll make it through the night. Sometimes you wonder, can you make it through the night? Gethsemane will be making it through the night. It's going to be dangerous. So he prays for these disciples. He said, I've kept them in thy name. I haven't lost one except the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. And all the way through this, he'll keep saying that the scripture might be fulfilled. Now they're going to cross over the Kedron Valley. I've been privileged to walk that walk. When I was there, it was dry, so there was no water running down through the valley. They're going to go up to Gethsemane. Gethsemane means the place where they squeeze the olives. There was a gate that led into Gethsemane. Jesus stations 2 guards at the gate. Peter and John are stationed at the gate to watch. Something going to happen. And Jesus goes about a stone throw into the garden, and he prays. You know that prayer. That's the one that's usually quoted. If it be thy will, let the cup pass from me. It was a cup of suffering. There's nothing like Gethsemane. Nothing like the suffering that Jesus, that 1 hour was the worst suffering of his whole life. He's praying in Gethsemane, and he's sweating. Water is running down over him. And John is the only one that tells this story. No, I'm sorry. Luke's the only one that tells us a story about how it looked like blood was oozing out his pores. Luke's the only one that tells me about an angel came. God answered the prayer and sent an angel to sustain him, and it was the worst hour of his life. Someone's coming up the valley. It looks like it's a mob. They were all armed. And I think they took down the 2 guards at the gate. You may say, I never heard this before. But remember that Jesus comes rushing out and said, who are you looking for? They said, Jesus of Nazareth. And then someone out of the crowd by the name of Judas Iscariot, he comes up and kisses him. And Jesus said, who do you say you're looking for? Jesus of Nazareth. I'm he. If you'll let these go, I'll go with you. Who is he talking about? The 2 guards at the gate. You let them go and I'll go with you. Now remember, before he got to Gethsemane, he's praying that they'll make it through the night. Yeah. You know, one wonders, they could have killed them all. There was a skirmish at the gate. There was a fight broke out. Peter had something like that. He cut a guy's ear off. And I think that's when they took him down. They must have taken John down because he says, let them go. And I'll go with you. So they bind him, hand and foot. I'm assuming they handcuffed him to one of the soldiers with the right hand and handcuffed him over here, shackled him, and he's bent over, you know. You know what I'm talking about. He can merely hobble along. But they marched him over to the high priest. Now, to get there, you have to go through the sheep gate. All the lambs went through the sheep gate, you know. To the high priest. And only John tells us this story. This is the high priest they went to. There's 2 high priests. There was Caiaphas and the old man Annas. Now the Romans didn't like to deal with the old man. So they had made his son-in-law high priest. But Jesus got to go before the high priest. So he ends up over at the castle of Annas. That's where the first hearing's going to be. That's kind of like an indictment. And Annas is going to question him. Who are your disciples? You want to know who they are. That's the first thing you want to know, who all you know. You watch these forensic files. I'm sure some of you have watched them. And they want to know who your friends are. So, Annas is asking him all kinds of questions. He gets no answer at all. But out in the courtyard, John has already got in, and Peter comes. And John's watching to see who's coming. And John turns up at the gate. Peter, we'll get this straight here. Peter arrives at the gate, but he can't get in. There's a guard at the gate. And John that's one of his relatives. Sometimes it's who you know. You know, he knew the right person. So he gets Peter through the gate into the courtyard, and they're going to observe what's going on inside, but they can't get inside the courtroom. But the door was open. I know the door was open because Jesus got a glimpse of Peter, and Peter got a glimpse of Jesus. Pretty soon, the guard that let him in, she says, "Wasn't you one of those disciples?" "No, not me." No. Then one of the other guards in there, they questioned Peter about this. He claimed he was even a Galilean. They could tell by the brogue that he was one of them. He denies it. Before the cock crows twice, thou wilt deny me thrice. Now, the cock crew. What time is it? 3 o'clock in the morning. That's cock crowing. On the top of the wall was a guard shack. They changed guards at 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So we know it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're changing the guards. They come out and blow up ram's horn. Let everybody know that all is well. I'd like to have a lot of time to talk about that cock crowing. I tell you all about it. You could read 39 books of the Old Testament and you won't even find the word cock in it. These were not roosters. But the Romans called this shift the cock crowing shift. And Mark 13, verse 35 tells us a little bit about it. It said, whether the master will come at midnight, cock crowing, or morning. Cock crowing's not in the morning. Cock crowing is at 3 o'clock at night. Now, we got to watch this because everything, in fact, Jesus' hours on the cross. And if you'd like a copy of that, it'll be here on the front seat. And by 6 o'clock, the trial will be over. By 9 o'clock, he will be on the cross. By 12 o'clock, there will be darkness over the whole land. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he'll be dead. By 6 o'clock, he will be in the tomb. And all of that's on this sheet here for you if you'd like a copy of it. Now let's talk about sending him down to the Supreme Court. So at the Annas' hearing, and this was merely a preliminary hearing, no decision was arrived at except he's bound over to the Supreme Court. That's the Sanhedrin. 71 judges, federal judges. And they're the only ones that could be in this room for the trial except the witnesses. And Jesus is going to be tried there. They had already coughed. It's amazing that they could get the Supreme Court together that night. And the judgment will be arrived at before daylight. Well, they parade the witnesses up front that they had, and all their testimony didn't agree. And finally, one fella got up and to testify, and he said that Jesus said that he would tear the temple down, build it back in 3 days. Now, these witnesses were questioned by some of the Supreme Court justices. They're pretty good at that. So they take this testimony apart. And this trial's going south. It looks to me like it's going to fold, because none of the witnesses agreed, and they proved them all to be liars. But the Chief Justice, he had something up his sleeve, as we'd say. So he's going to adjure Jesus, and now Jesus has got to talk. He hadn't said a word. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and like a sheep is dumb before shearer, so he opened not his mouth. And in his humiliation, his judgment was taken away. And who will declare his generation? For he's cut off from the land of the living. For the sins of my people was he slain. You know, that's a little of Isaiah 53. So he hasn't said a word. And the Chief Justice adjures him. Now, when you are adjured, you must answer. You can't take the fifth. You must answer. And he asked him one question. Are you the Christ, the Son of God? And of course, he must answer. And he answered it and said, oh, as one gospel said, thou hast said it, and the other said, he said, yes. And now, this Supreme Court justice, who is the Chief Justice, he rips his robe. He puts on an appearance that would earn him an Oscar in Hollywood. He says, what further need have we of witnesses? We don't need any witnesses. You've heard him say it. He's guilty of blasphemy. So if you can picture this, they take a vote. Went all the way around the room. Number one, how do you vote? Guilty. Number two, how are you voting? Guilty. And they took a vote around the room, 70 of them. They decided that he was guilty of blasphemy, so they're going, that's a death penalty, isn't it? But they are Jews, and they are not allowed, they're under Roman rule, and Rome won't allow them to kill a person for the word blasphemy. So they're going to send him now. He's guilty, according to them. They're going to send him over to Pontius Pilate, who's the governor. But they're going to change the verdict. You all understand what it means when they change a verdict. So when they send him over there, they're going to charge him with stirring up the people, conspiracy, failing to pay taxes, not honoring Caesar. Well, the governor takes him in the courtroom and he's going to question him now. But Jesus doesn't say a word. So finally, the governor decides, I don't see anything wrong with this guy. But there's a lot of clamoring going on the outside of the courtroom. Looks like it might be fomenting a riot. But during all of this, they make a lot of accusations. And you know the story? The word Galilee comes up. So he's from Galilee. Pilate now knows I can get this case out of my courtroom. Send him up to Herod. So he sent him up to Herod. Oh, you know the Herod family, don't you? Remember them? There was the Herod that killed all those babies down there. And you remember Herod the Great? You remember what he did? Cut off the head of John the Baptist. You remember these? Now, this is Herod up there. And he listens to Jesus. He thought maybe Jesus will perform a miracle for me. But Jesus is silent. He didn't say anything. He never got anything out of him. Herod can't find him guilty of anything either. So he sent him back down to Governor Pilate. And Governor Pilate doesn't really know what to do now with this case because he's already got a note from his wife. His wife says, have nothing to do with this just man. So, he doesn't really know how to handle this case at this point. He questioned Jesus one more time. And he said, you know, if you just speak up, I could let you loose. Why don't you talk to me? Jesus wouldn't say a word. And he said, I have power to release you And Jesus said, you wouldn't have any power at all if my Father hadn't given it to you. But he that delivered you to me hath the greater sin. Now, Pilate wants to get out of the whole thing, and he's thinking he can get out of it, so it was customary that they let somebody loose, you know. Every year they did this. Sort of sound familiar? Yeah, you know, our presidents do that every year. They turn a lot of people out of prison. They give them a pardon. And so they had a custom of letting someone loose. So he brings this notable prisoner that was a murderer, had been convicted. In fact, he was to be crucified at 9 o'clock that morning. Him and 2 others that was in on the riot. But Pilate knows that Jesus hadn't done anything wrong. So he said, well, which one do you want me to release unto you? Now, you stand Barabbas here beside of Jesus. And he knew one thing. They'll pick Jesus. Hey, they don't. You don't want to pick a murderer. But the high priest had already stirred up the crowd. And it looked like it was going to turn into a riot. And they were crying out, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. And finally Pilate, he sees there's nothing he can do. He just takes a basin of water and washes his hands of the whole affair and said, have you to it. Now, there's a little more to that story, but I'm going to leave it go at this time. So they prepare him for the crucifixion. Now, in order to prepare a person for the crucifixion is they'll beat him within an inch of his life. And if I may tell you just this much about it, they'll have 5 men taking care of the beating. They strip him off until he doesn't have any clothes on. They will bend him over a whipping post. They will fasten his hands down at the bottom with a D-ring. And then one man will be over here at a 45-degree angle and another man over here at a 45-degree angle. And they're going to have one of these cat of 9 tails. It's much bigger than this, of course. And in this cat of 9 tails, there'll be a hunk of lead. There will be a piece of flint and other pieces of metal, and so they're going to beat him within an inch of his life. But I said there's 5 men. There's 2 doing the beating, 2 more that are relief men, and then there's the chief one that's watching over the beating. They don't want to kill him. That's happened too many times. In fact, if you read the books, you'll find out that sometimes as many as 2/3 of the people died before they even got to crucify him. They don't want him to die, they want to crucify him. So after the beating, they're going to take him over, and they're going to have a little fun in the barracks. Nothing like beating up a Jew, is there? If you don't think so, almost every country in the world hates the Jews. We're the only country that's took them in and kept them. And they'd like to get rid of them too. We have some people that we brought into this country, they were Jew haters. They're Christ deniers. They're God haters. Well, so they array him with a nice robe, and then they put this crown of thorns up there on him. I mean, something like that. Put that on his head. They blindfold him. They buffet him. That's cold cocking somebody. Hit you one in the face like that. So they beat him up good. Have a little fun. It's called Jew beating. So they beat him up, bring him out. He's ready now for the crucifixion. Crucifixion, there's 5 million people in town. You all know that, don't you? All the Jews gathered there for the feast of the Passover. And they're waiting for Friday morning. They're all lined up along the way. They want to see these 3 men, who they expect to be crucified. Yeah, Barabbas, yeah, and the 2 thieves of which we don't know their names. So they're waiting for the parade, which will be from the army barracks all the way over to the cross. That's about a third to half a mile. And he's got to carry his own cross. I'll talk to you a moment about that cross. I'm looking at it with a fresh new set of eyes. Do you mind if I tell you I've got a fresh new set of eyes that I'm looking at this? And I said, this idea that they had this great big long pole, 16 to 20 feet long, with a cross member on it, 5 foot, and this guy somebody is going to carry this cross over there? Are you kidding me? That would weigh what? 270 to 300 pounds. Now, I know a little bit about logs. I've cut them. I built log houses, 2 of them. I took down 5 from the 1800s. I drug logs out of the woods with a team of horses. So I know about logs. This log would be about 8 inches in diameter at the bottom and probably about 6 inches at the top. It would be somewhere around 18 to 20 feet long. It will be set 30 inches in the ground. There will be a cross member on it that would be 5 feet long, and at 6 inches in from each end, they're going to put a nail, a spike, and I think I have some of them. I don't think these little ones is going to work. Maybe one this big. Maybe could be that big. Could even be a wooden peg. Oh, wooden pegs wouldn't hold it. Think about that for a way. If you say that, you don't know anything about wooden pegs. They're strong. So now, they bring out the cross member. It's 5 foot long. And they're going to put that behind him, and they're going to march him. He's got to carry his own cross. I thought he was carrying the whole thing. Oh. I'm going to take you back a little bit, but in the earlier 1900s and all through my childhood, I would watch these people set these telephone poles. Yeah. They'd have a crew come by and they'd set the pole. And then a few days later, come another crew. They put the cross on it, the cross member. Yep. And then a few days later, here comes the one stringing the wire and put the insulators up there. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not talking about electric poles. I'm talking about telephone poles. But the cross was about that size. But this cross member, they had cut a notch. We're going to call it the male notch in the middle of it. So they can slide it up the pole. And on the pole, they've cut another notch. This is the female notch. Now they're going to slide this up the pole all the way, and then when it gets up there, they'll drop it in the notch. It's secured. They're going to have to pierce his hands and his feet. Now, piercing, you say that's the arm. Well, tell the police that. They know where to put the handcuffs. Y'all got it? When they bind a person hand and foot, they bind him here, not here. You can't drive a nail through this 26 bones in your hand, and that won't hold anything. But if you pierce this part, and then with the index finger, you reach in, and there's a tendon there. That tendon will hold 4 times the body weight. The first job I had was in a meat locker. They would hang all these half of a beef that had weighed before it was dressed about 1,200 pounds. After they got it dressed, it weighed 8 something. Then they cut it in half. Now it's down to 400. But they pulled it. Let me show you. That's the tendon. That's strong as a steel cable. When you slaughter any animal, and by the way, Dad killed a lot of animals that week. 50,000 lambs were killed that week. Did you hear me? And they picked this tendon up. Now here's how they did the lamb. They took the 2 tendons at the back and 2 tendons down here on its 2 legs. And now they have skinned it, removed the entrails. No bone can be broken. And then they put it over an open fire on a spit. So they had barbecue. I know it's not called barbecue in your Bible, but it was roasted. If I roast the lamb, I barbecued him. So they had barbecue that night. Okay? So how'd they hang him? So reach in and reach right down here, and you'll find a tendon right at the back of your ankle. That's not what killed him. Very little pain from that. So he's got to carry this cross member out to Calvary. All the way. And the crowd along the way will be jeering and cheering and cursing and throwing dust in the air. We're going to get over to Calvary now. They're going to take all these clothes off of him. By the way, I just want to tell you that they had somebody else carry his cross for him. Why did they want to do that? They wanted to shame him. That's what they wanted to do, was shame him. And when they get him to the cross, they take his clothes off of him. And they fold him up and lay him down here at the foot of the cross. And they're going to, these guys that's doing the crucifixion, they want the clothes. So they gamble for him. And well, we'll leave it there. Now he's already been pierced. And they got to get him back here. And they're going to get a couple guys here with ladders. And they're going to slide this right up this pole until it comes to that, just above that notch. And they're going to drop it back in. And he's hanging there like this. He's got to hang there till he's dead. There's a sign above him. The high priest want that sign changed, but Pilate said, "What I've written, I've written." What causes death on the cross? I'm going to give you, I looked at it with fresh new eyes. Now, when you hang a body up there like that, with these two tendons, this tendon here and this tendon here, this one tendon will hold 4 times my body weight. Don't worry about it tearing out. It won't. What it'll do, it'll end up pulling my joints apart. My shoulder will be out of socket. This tendon runs all the way through my body. It's going to tighten up on me. While I'm on the cross, my feet are fastened down here on the pole part. And I'll keep shoving up. I can't get my breath. I got my breath again. I'm sagging on the cross. I keep my breath. He can't get his breath till he pushes up. He's pushing up. He's done this for 6 hours. Until finally, at last, he can't push anymore. What killed him? Asphyxiation. He can't breathe. Do you remember on the cross? There was some conversation. I'm going to circle back to that one. There was 2 men on each side. They were swearing and cussing. They were tearing into Jesus. Now, 3 of the Gospels tell that story. And then there's one of the Gospels says that he said, "Remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom." And Jesus said, "Tomorrow you'll be with me in paradise." Only place it says that. Just one of the Gospels. Well, I'm not going to spend time on that because I want to tell you about, finally at last, there's been darkness over the whole land since 12 o'clock. Now, some people say that it was just a natural disaster. But it couldn't have been because it was during the full moon. It was full moon. And you can't have an eclipse. You can't have an eclipse and a full moon at the same time. So those guys are all wrong in telling you it was just an eclipse. It's a God thing. You don't understand. Now my daughter, she's one of those women that everything's a God thing. Well, we say this is a God thing. Something happened up there. But long about 3 o'clock, he's saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Now, didn't say it that clear because they thought he was calling for Elias. Elias is who they're calling for. So, what happened? They said, wait, maybe Elias will come, so give him and put some vinegar up there and touch his lip. You know, when a person's dying, you know what you do, a wet cloth here, and you get something over your lips. And what he really said was, Eli, lama sabachthani. It's tightened across his chest. It's so tight across. It's fixating him. And then he said, it's finished. It's finished. Father, unto thy hands I commend my spirit. And rocks was renting. The ground was shaking under them. Dead men came out of the tomb. Oh, no, one of the Gospels tells that story. Only one. Dead men came out of the tomb, walked up through old Jerusalem, and was greeting the people that knew him. And over in the temple, it's the priests are in there on duty, and suddenly this veil in the temple split from top to bottom. Oh, I'm telling you. Now, I'm not sure how big the veil was. If I look in the Old Testament, it's 30 feet wide and 30 feet tall. But then Herod had rebuilt the temple, and they said he increased it 30 feet, or maybe 40. And so now this curtain is maybe 60, 70 feet tall. And it's a handbreadth in width, they said. That'd be 4 inches thick. And it was woven from crossways. It's impossible for it to rip. And of all things, it ripped from top to bottom. It didn't start at the bottom and rip up like somebody had already tinkered with it, you know. Well, it took, I'm told it took 200 men to hang it. That's how big this drape was. And it ripped. Dead men, talk about shock and awe. This was shock and awe. Ground shaking under you. Rocks splitting for no known reason. Dead men walking up the street. The veil of the temple is rent in twain. And They got to get this body down off the cross. So, reverse procedure for getting him down now. Just reverse the procedure. They'll take him down from the cross. But before they do, they want to make sure that everybody's dead. Now, do you remember me telling you that the way you stay alive on the cross is you have to keep doing this? You keep getting some breath back in your lungs by shoving up. You shove up and get another breath. Shove up and get another breath. But Jesus is already dead, 3 o'clock. The other two are not dead yet. So they come along, and I suppose they use something like that. And they break the legs of the other 2 men, and now they can't shove up. So what's happened? When you can't shove up, you can't get your breath. And what do you die from? Asphyxiation. You can't breathe. Is this a horrible death? Yes. All right. Now, so they make sure that he's dead. They want to take this dead body down from the cross, but Pilate said, "Well, I'm not so sure." And he wants to talk to the centurion. He's in charge of the crucifixion, you know. And the centurion tells him, he said, he's dead all right. I just stuck a spear up in his side, and forthwith came blood and water. Now, I don't know what their spear looked like, but probably about like that. And he's hanging up there, way up in the air, and he hits him right here. Do you all see that? Right under the rib cage. Water. Where's that come from? It came out of the bladder. Blood. That cut every artery in here. All the way to the heart. And when the centurion assured Pilate that he'd killed him, and John said, "I've personally seen this happen." They take him down from the cross now. His clothes are already gone. They carry him over to a tomb. By the way, one of the Supreme Court justices had a tomb cut out. I've been there, and let me tell you, that's something else. What they did over on the side of by the way, about all they got over there is a lot of rock. Yeah. So they had hewn out in the side of the hill a tomb. It had 2 rooms in it. Now you went in the first room, and there's like a bench there. They laid the body on the bench, and they're going to wrap him up with this cloth, linen cloth, because it won't deteriorate. So they use a linen cloth and about 100 pounds of spices, and 2 or 3, 4 men are going to wind him up and leave him there. And they close this tomb up, and then they get some wax out and melt it, and they pour this around, and then they put the seal in it so nobody can go in and see. Now, inside this tomb, they're going to leave this body for a year. And a year from now, they'll come back and unwrap this body, and then they will dismember the arms. All parts of the body are dismembered, and they put them in a sarcophagus about this big, and put a lid on it and put your name on it and seal it. And they put it now in the back room on the shelves. And all the family, as the mother dies and the father dies and the grandkids die, they'll put them same way, same treatment all over again, put them in a sarcophagus, put them on the shelf, and that's where they'll be till Resurrection Day. Now, they're supposing that they'll do this to Jesus, but can I circle back for one moment, and then I'm finished? On the cross, when he said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. You know what? They thought he was calling for Elias. He was quoting the 22nd Psalm. That's the first line of the 22nd Psalm. Do you know the 22nd Psalm is a psalm that tells us about everything that's happening on the cross? It's the crucifixion psalm. In fact, it tells you about them parting his garments, piercing arms and legs, while he's hanging on the cross, that his bones are pulled out of joint. And then the final word of the psalm says, it's finished. It's over. I'd like to finish this, but it's have to wait 3 days. It's yours, brother.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Yeah, if you, yeah, thank you, brother. I was sharing one time with the congregation that when I was listening to one time, they had a medical professional talk about the sufferings of the cross, and that Jesus' back would have just been shredded to pieces. It would have been bone exposed.
It was.
That every time he had to take a breath, he would have had to rake his back against that cross.
Yeah.
And let it back down. And that happened for hours. When I listened to that, I began to weep.
Yeah.
You know, at the suffering